This is KEXP 90.3 FM in Seattle, streaming online at kexp.org and on the KEXP mobile app. My name is Alex, your host of Pacific Notions. It's our early Sunday morning specialty show from 6 to 9 a.m. It's a 3-hour spotlight on the best in ambient and neoclassical music and other cinematic sounds. For the very first in-studio session for Pacific Notions, I'm very honored and happy to welcome Montreal-based cellist, pianist, composer, vocalist, Rebecca Foon.
Trying
It's Rebecca Foon live here on KEXP for Pacific Notions. That track, titled ICA Inner City Angels, coming from the Saltland project of yours from the 2013 album I Thought It Was Us, but it was all of us. First off, Rebecca, thank you for coming through KEXP today to be a part of the show.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
So you are touring in anticipation and support of a new album titled Waxing Moon that's coming out February 21st.
Yeah.
It's the first album under your own name, and I want to talk to you more about this record. But first, I want the folks to know about some of your amazing accomplishments that you've
so
had in your 20-year career. And you can correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but you joined Silver Mount Zion back in 2001 for their second album, which to me was one of the first albums that really showed me the power and the beauty of instrumental music, which kind of informs Pacific Notions. So I love that this is kind of full circle. Co-founder of the band Esmerine.
Yeah.
And your 2013 album, Dalmac, won the Juno Award for Best Instrumental Album. Highly recommend folks to dig into that record. And then Fifths of Seven, a little kind of little known trio that you're in with Spencer Krug of Wolf Parade, Sunset Rub Down. Hersta is another group you're a part of, Land of Kush.
Yeah.
Set Fire to Flames. Anyway, a part of all those amazing projects. And then Saltland was really your first solo project.
Yeah.
Which that record, or the song you just played coming off that first record that Saltland put out. But this new album, Waxing Moon, it's the first one under your own name. I'm curious if you can tell me more about why this is the first thing you've put out under your own name and what the inspiration behind that was.
Well, first of all, I think I was really shy when I made that first Saltland album. So the idea of putting it out under my own name was extremely daunting because it was my first attempt to sing on my own. And, but also I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. I was exploring, so it was like creating a place to explore. But this new album, and I was going to put this new album out under Saltland, but the songs and I think the intentions behind the album that are not necessarily planned or strategic, but it's a very, very intimate album and a very spiritual album for me in terms of my own experience in my own life. And I found a part of myself I'd never found before making this album that I think I'm channeling through the music. And so it just felt right to put it under my own name because I feel so naked on this album. So why not just put it under your own name?
I think that's a impactful move and decision to really just lay it all out there and make it your first album
Why not, right?
after 20 years of collaborations and solo projects under different names.
Yeah. And it was a very personal experience, this album, more than any of the other albums. Like the first Saltland album, I had a bunch of collaborators that very much encouraged me and helped me make that album. And then the second one, I worked very closely with Warren Ellis on a few of those tracks. And then this one, even though I had some very dear friends play on it, it was a very, very intimate, personal music writing experience. So
feel like that comes through in the record, which you're best known as a cellist.
Yeah.
The Waxing Moon features some tracks with just you and the piano, which we'll hear in a second. But I'm curious if there was any inspiration to get behind the piano and kind of have that be a basis for these new tracks that ended up on the record.
Well, I think as a musician, I think many musicians go through a feeling of getting too comfortable in their own process. And then when you're as we all know, when you're too comfortable in life, you maybe get a bit boring. And so I wanted to, I needed a different vehicle to help me write. But I also, and I don't really play piano. I've never had a piano lesson in my life. But I needed a way, I also needed to write lyrics, and I really needed to sing and not do it in the way that I was used to, which was like building loops and building a whole crazy soundscape of cello that was very comfortable and then singing on top of it. I needed it to be, I had gone through a bunch of personal experiences as well as like observing the state of the world that was all extremely heartbreaking, and I needed an outlet, and the piano was like just what I was gravitated to try to kind of get into. It was almost like a therapy mechanism to express what I needed to express, even though I wasn't sure if I could do it or like do anything interesting or not. But it's like there was a magnetic pull.
Gotcha. The piano is featured on the new record as well as the cello, and there's even some I'll say some interesting, more lively, almost pop-leaning songs on the record. But thanks. I think it was somewhere in the.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Like in a more vocal way, which obviously you're more vocal. Your vocals are more upfront on this new record. Yeah. Seems like was this the first time really trying to write songs and actually like put lyrics down to mesh with your compositions?
Well, the last two Saltland albums, there's a pile of lyrics and singing, but this one, I just had a lot to say. And beyond just the lyrics, there was an energy that I needed to tap into that I somehow was able to find in my voice that I'd never found before. I was like able to channel and discover something in myself and in my voice. Like I think when I listen to Waxing Moon versus the other two albums, I feel like my voice sounds completely different. And when I sing now, like it's like I feel like I'm a different person. It's so weird. And I think that whatever that experience was that I needed to unleash in myself was partly why it's such a vocal-driven album.
There's definitely a lot of message behind your music and a message behind a lot that you do outside of music, which we'll talk about in a bit. But if you want to play a couple tracks from the new record,
Sure, I'd
that'd
love
be
to.
lovely.
Thank you.
It's Rebecca Foon live here on KEXP for Pacific Notions.
child between us murdered me, helping me believe in almost anything. When you left, I cried 1,000 tears, holding on to you eternally. Give me your hand and I'll take you to the ocean of love and give you everything, to the ocean of hope and give you everything. You begged through me with your eternal beauty and these great vessels of freedom casting upon me, giving me the wisdom to expand like the waxing moon, to all beings that are infinite, wishing to benefit all. I desperately need your golden light, seeds of hope for those bounding themselves in a prison of darkness, dark with ignorance. You let the light in, abandoning dark places for those who choose to see this beautiful waxing moon, this beautiful waxing moon, this beautiful waxing moon.
Beautiful stuff. It's Rebecca Foon live here on KEXP for Pacific Notions. 2 tracks from the new album that is titled Waxing Moon, coming out February 21st on Constellation Records. That second track, the title track, Waxing Moon, and then Ocean Song right before that. Beautiful songs, beautiful messages, and we were talking about all the prolific music career of yours, but outside of music, you are doing a whole lot of work as an activist for climate change and to kind of address the climate crisis that we're currently in the midst of. You're a member of the Sustainability Solutions Group, as well as co-founder of the 1,000 Cities Initiative, but then also the co-founder of Pathway to Paris. I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more about what is Pathway to Paris.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So my partner and I, Jessie Paris-Smith, co-founded Pathway to Paris kind of by accident because we were really concerned at the time of the Paris talks in December in 2015 that the Paris Agreement wouldn't come to fruition because of everything that happened with Kyoto and Copenhagen. And so we decided in the lead up to put on a series of concerts because we're both musicians and we're both environmentalists, and we found a synergy between each other. We'd performed together years ago and just had followed each other and recognized in each other that we were both really concerned musicians. And so we decided to call a series of concerts Pathway to Paris and bring together beautiful musicians that cared about the climate crisis to help ignite inspiration and build a movement with art and culture around the importance of turning the Paris Agreement into reality, or actually making it into an agreement. And then after we put on a big concert in Paris at the time, and we were so inspired when the agreement came together. But then obviously since then, not only politically, but also just in terms of problem solving with the state of our world, we're facing an extremely complicated problem that you could call even beautiful in the sense that it brings together all of our issues and is just putting all of our issues very clearly on the table. And so we obviously have a very small window of time to figure out how to meet the targets, or maybe even hopefully go beyond the targets established in the Paris Agreement of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5. And so right now, we started Pathway to Paris as an official nonprofit to try to do everything that we can in our lives and inspire as many people around us, and also galvanize and bring together people that we know really care but don't quite know what to do with their energy, and just try to facilitate as much as we can a movement around waking up our world a bit more in terms of problem solving and offering solutions like the 1,000 Cities Initiative.
Yeah, I was going to say the Pathway to Paris obviously had to do a lot with the Paris Agreement, which the U.S. at the time agreed to be a part of, and has since, with the current administration, they've declared to want to remove themselves. I'm curious if there's been any shift or acceleration in how you're addressing the motivation behind Pathway to Paris in the last, what has it been, 3 months since that announcement?
Yeah, we knew it was coming, but the 1,000 Cities Initiative is our initiative to try and find a solution that all citizens of the world can get behind and feel like they have power and a voice and can put energy into. And so the idea behind it is that if 1,000 cities of the world come together and go zero emissions and 100% renewable by 2040, then we can meet the targets in the Paris Agreement. So it's bringing it back down to a community city level, which is obviously extremely ambitious, but it's something I think a human can, because climate change is such a massive problem. It's a thing. If you think about your city, Seattle, what would it take for Seattle to go zero emissions by 2040? And most cities now in North America do have climate action plans and have targets, but they're not that ambitious. But if we can help, if many citizens in Seattle, for example, figured out what the targets were for Seattle and got behind wanting their city to go zero emissions and renewable, because what a cool city that would be, right?
Yeah.
And then came together and tried and really put effort into making it possible. I really do think it is possible, especially with the way city work is going. So if we imagine that on a local level, and then imagine that one city inspiring another city, which happens with climate action plans, then it feels like a hopeful way to solve a very complicated problem.
Very global problem. Yeah. I do appreciate how the 1,000 Cities initiative does make it more local and a little bit like it's not just one country trying to be held responsible for taking action. It makes it more local, a little smaller, more community driven, hopefully.
Yeah, and also I think it does involve the human imagination, because like we can imagine the apocalypse, I think, in some ways, but like, can we imagine a renewable city that no longer uses fossil fuels? And it's kind of hard to imagine with the current infrastructure, but if us as humans can start to think that way and start to design that way, that's like a world I want to live in. Is like a world that's not polluted, and like where the commons are treated like the commons, and where we can really start investing in our infrastructure in ways that are imagining a sustainable future for all.
There's some flagship cities that seem to be a part of the 1,000 Cities initiative.
Yeah.
Have you seen examples of not necessarily major metropolitan cities, but smaller towns or any smaller cities that have actually gotten to a place of zero emissions?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we're actually doing a research project right now of looking at metropolitan and smaller towns all over the world, and looking at their current climate action plans and targets, and then seeing, like, if you go to the 1,000 Cities, we're just starting it, so it's not super comprehensive yet, but you can see targets for different cities around the world and where it's at, and there's not that many out there that are actually hitting those targets. The thing with the 1,000 Cities initiative, it's more of a concept than, because it's pushing everybody outside of their comfort zone, and that's what we're trying to do. And so, but what we're also trying to do is really pay attention to what's going on in the world in terms of those targets, and what are the barriers and opportunities to help support cities go over the hump. Because one like for a flagship's leading city, it's more looking at 2050, going zero emissions, 100% renewable by 2050. That's kind of what we're seeing right now. So we're just trying to push that a little bit more, which is really hard and complicated and requires a lot of investment. So it's like a massive shift in risk and economics and thinking and all of that. But yeah, so that's basically what we're doing. And then we're trying to also, with our concerts, highlight what's going on and just also engage citizens, because urban planning and city work can feel like it's in the hands of bureaucracy and then can be just because of that, and the language around it can feel like a barrier to an average citizen living in their city. And so we're trying to bridge that gap through art and culture and just open up the dialogue more as well.
I think it's amazing what you're doing behind the scenes, outside of the music. I'm curious if you have any suggestions on ways folks can immediately get involved, either in getting behind the 1,000 Cities initiative or just things that they can do.
Yeah,
general.
like either in terms of getting involved with the 1,000 Cities initiative, the key thing, first of all, is like figuring out what's going on in your own city. So looking at your city's targets, and then we're here as support to help like where there is interest, we support cities in design. We have a technical team as well that supports cities in terms of climate action planning and figuring out how to actually move ambitious targets into implementation and how to make them more ambitious so that you can actually design a plan around these targets. So that's one way, is like to figure out what's going on in your city, and if the city needs support in terms of their climate action planning and implementation. And then also just getting like looking at the divestment movement in the city and seeing where money is going in terms of the fossil fuel industry and renewable energy, and engaging community initiatives that are committed to climate action and moving towards a resilient, renewable city.
I saw that there was a petition online that's affiliated kind of with the 1,000 Cities initiative. It looks like it's 80% there. It's getting close to the goal.
Constantly trying to get more ambitious, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can throw a link on a playlist when this airs to check that out. But Pathway to Paris, you found it with Jessie Ferris-Smith, daughter of Patti Smith. Is there any events coming up revolving around that at this time?
Not at the moment, but there will be.
Okay, cool. You can check it out. I think pathwaytoparis.com is where you can find out all that information. I was driving into the station today. There was a beautiful rainbow that came through out of all the rain and the clouds. And it just made me think about trying to find the hope in the day-to-day. And I think Pacific Notions as a show tries to find a beauty, I think, in the chaos of everything, trying to give people this 3-hour opportunity to just slow down and kind of reflect.
That's so beautiful.
I'm curious how you find hope in this day and age with everything going on.
Honestly, I feel the same way. Like I don't know if we'll make the transition or not into a renewable world. And right now what I'm doing, because things are so complex and can feel so intense, that I'm really, and I think this is what this album is about too. It's like I'm just really trying to take in the beauty of this world a lot, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And so I really just want to feel alive and with that offer as much positive energy as I can within my one life and do whatever I can. But also I really want to take in the beautiful trees and the rainbows and the music and feel alive.
And keep it around, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Rebecca Foon, live here on KEXP. Waxing Moon's the new album.
Yeah.
It's coming out February 21st. Currently touring in support and in anticipation of it. And you've got one more song, I believe, to share.
Yes, I do.
So it's Rebecca Foon, live here on KEXP for Pacific Notions.
Wonderful. vicious cycle of greed, fight, transformation. I only wish this for you. Such intensity, sweet smile, your true light raptures me, oh, raptures me.
It's Rebecca Foon live here on KEXP. That track, titled I Only Wish This For You, from the 2017 album A Common Truth, from your Saltland project. Thank you so much for sharing your music today.
Oh, thank you so much.
And all the amazing work you're doing to combat climate change and the climate crisis. Once again, Pathway to Paris is the organization you co-founded, co-run. You can check that out at pathwaytoparis.com. And then the 1,000 Cities Initiative, a way for folks to get a little more involved and informed about what's happening at a local level. That's at 1000cities.com as well. And you're here because you got a new record. It's coming out February 21st, once again, Waxing Moon, your first under your own name. A lot going on, but all wonderful stuff. Anything else you want to share before we wrap things up?
No, just thank you so much. It was so wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing your music to KEXP. Truly appreciate it.
Yay.
I want to send a thanks to Kevin, as well as Steve, Jim, Scott, Justin, and Karina. Appreciate you all for being a part of this, and Rebecca Foon as well. This is 90.3 KEXP in Seattle.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.